record button, right? Cool.
God.
Um, oh man, thank you so much for doing this, for coming out for us.
Yeah, no
this is
worries.
awesome.
Yeah,
Really
of
appreciate
course, indeed. Big moment.
You doing all right?
Yeah, it's been doing good. It's I've got to go to my wife's parents' place after this, but other than that, pretty good.
Gotcha. Cool. Yeah, we won't keep you longer.
It's all
If
good.
you need to go as early as like 2:30, 2:45.
No, it's all good. To be honest, we want to delay it as much as possible.
Right. Understood.
Oh man, the hard the harsh truth. Oh,
How is everybody else doing?
super excited.
It's awesome. You're like you're quite the like VIP speaker, I suppose. Like we don't, I mean, we have a couple of cool professors here that have like degrees in like environment art or something, but to bring in in someone that's like a seasoned game dev, let alone someone that's so involved in the industry as a project manager, like is really, this is awesome. Like this is really cool to have you.
Yeah, like if you guys are interested in other people, I have a lot of friends that are definitely open to help out. So yeah.
That would be awesome. We actually, I guess we have some more slots open in the coming.
We had a pretty big slot open recently with one of our guest speakers not being available anymore.
One of our professors who was like a teacher at some top like game dev university here in the United States. He worked at, where did he work previously?
Was it Full Sail?
No, not Full Sail. No, he was somewhere like it was a big one. It was like one of the main ones. I can't remember the name of it, but it was one of those main like digital arts schools. And anyways, he is not available. But yeah. Well, it's just about two. Yeah. How many people? We got 22 people in here. Maybe some more will come in. We'll see.
I'm sure people will continue to filter in
Yeah.
as the hour goes on.
Possibly miss anything.
Yeah.
So out of interest, are you guys on the same class? Are you all at the same universities? Like what's the background?
UF, yes. We're all coming at you.
We've got a couple people who are still in high school.
I was in the Apparently. club.
We do, yeah. We have. Was that Cleo Declan?
Yeah.
Was that you?
That
Hey,
was
so
me.
that's one of my. I taught him in high school. He's still in high school, but or Cleo, but yeah. There's like maybe one or two high schoolers in here, but
Mostly from UF.
for the most part, like freshmen through seniors and more. There might be a master's degree person or two in here at UF, doing all sorts of different majors too. Some of us are even like marketing or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're gonna call me out like that. Yeah.
Well, just passionate about game dev.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
All different walks of life and talent and competencies. All just trying to.
Competency, yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
There is no one route in game development, so yeah,
Cool.
it's whichever route you enjoy.
Well, yeah, it's two. I mean, if Colin, if you'd like to get started, I mean, if you could tell us a bit about yourself and like who you are, where you're coming from, I guess, and yeah.
Sure, I'll keep my history relatively short, as it does take quite a while to get through the full list anyway. In general, I started off in kind of indie / kind of IT. I created my first kind of game app when I was probably 15 and sold that for actually some money, which was great actually back then. I moved into more of an IT role, did some stuff with chest, heart and stroke, charities, you name it, that kind of thing. I then ended up going to work for a kind of contractual studio, worked with many different kind of mediums from mobile, web, kind of building out apps, as well as kind of helping out kind of board games and certain things like that. The actual company that used to be that is now building out kind of distribution of board games across the world, and is probably one of the largest in the world for that. So that's pretty cool. When I went from there, I went from Vancouver, actually. I was originally in Scotland and I moved to Vancouver. And I actually studied at Vancouver Film School, 3D animation and visual effects. I ended up going straight into architecture from there, which is, I know, a weird kind of tangent. But I ended up kind of doing architecture visualization, worked with many large buildings, including Trump Tower, Vancouver House, many large buildings in Canada, North America, you name it, probably over 200-ish buildings. Ended up going into games more. Worked for a kind of contractual company where we worked with Square Enix, 2K Games, Bethesda, worked with Sony, Disney, and a couple of other places there. My boss at the time was an ex-EA employee and senior ex-EA employee. And so I ended up going to EA, working in a team called DRE, which is Development-Based Engineering, which is a fancy-ass word to say automatic testing. So every single line of code, every single art asset, anything that you built goes through DRE, is tested through the entire build of the game, and that's every single game on every single platform gets tested and spits out a result and tells you you either suck or you're great, and gives you like performance kind of in between of like, let's say you added a model and it had a doorknob and it was 20 million polygons. Well, it's going to go to you and say, look, guys, 20 million polygons for a doorknob is kind of a lot. It's all automated, but it would also work with programming. It would also tell you if your code was particularly optimized or if it was causing issues later down the line. Really kind of cool stuff. One of the kind of largest kind of QA-esque automation systems in the world. After that, I ended up going to, where did I go from there? I think I went to Capcom from there. Capcom? Yeah, Activision, Capcom. It's been a while. Activision, I think. And I worked on Call of Duty, COD Mobile, many games that were kind of being built at the time, including ones built in China, including ones built here. My teams were focused on all of the back end. So making sure that when the builds were released, that it didn't just crash on day one because 3 million people logged in at the same time. To making sure that loot systems were working again effectively and fairly, which I know is a questionable term, to all of the data, because we go through a terabyte of data per minute. And a terabyte of data per minute is very expensive when you get into multiple projects. So making sure that that data was handled, the kind of money was handled for that, making sure people understood that you gotta only store it for a certain amount of times, or if there's ways we can mitigate it or store it in other mediums, whatever that may be, because you don't want to house it all in Amazon Cloud because you will just be spending a fortune. End up going to, I think it was the Capcom from there. Capcom was a small stint before the studio closed. Worked on a couple of projects there. The studio unfortunately closed due to issues within the studio. They closed pretty much all of North American studios at that time, but we released 3 games while I was there, and a short stint I was there. Ended up going to the Coalition at Microsoft and going on to Gears of War and Gears Tactics. I was responsible for anything multiplayer, as well as co-op campaigns and things like that. So that was kind of the stint there. After that, I went to Clipwire Games, which none of you will have heard of. And it is owned by AppLovin, which again, none of you will have heard of, likely. But it's one of the largest mobile games studios in the world, and it makes bingo. And I'm aware that is such a revolutionary tangent that just doesn't make sense. But bingo currently in the world, that bingo game is making the 8th most money in the world for mobile games, that is. And pretty much it only sells in North America. So yeah, it was quite a big deal, even though most people had never heard of it. And it was very kind of a niche market, but I was interested in mobile games and I was kind of curious how it was different from kind of AAA games, and I wanted to get more involved there. So I joined a studio. Pretty much I was running the entire studio at that time. We made significant profits. We went 400% profit during the time I was there, and I kind of hated it. from the fact that you hire psychiatrists to essentially figure out how to scam more money out of people's wallets, to the fact that you have to understand that you shouldn't care about your people, you should be caring about how to make profits. And to me, that was a completely tangential from where I'd been at AAA, where as much as there is the obvious thing of make money, you generally do try to make a good game. Not always. I'm not going to say everybody's good. Yay. But in general, they do try to make a decent game. Whereas mobile, it's all about the profits. It's all about getting that next paycheck into your kind of wallet. And it wasn't something I enjoyed. So recently I've moved to education and VR and things like that. So we're working with Airbus, as well as many other large colleges and universities in Canada and North America. We have some with, I didn't talk about that one. Yes, so we've got a deal upcoming with the Pentagon, actually, for training people using kind of SWAT style missions. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff we're doing with VR. We're trying to make it easier to train so that people can do it safely, securely, and it becomes muscle memory rather than allowing yourself to get electrocuted or shot in the face or whatever it may be, as well as working with PTSD and making sure that people really understand the dangers of these things by having issues on your body where if you get hit, it hurts. So yeah, that's currently where I've been and where I'm currently at. And yeah, I'm pretty much running that studio as it stands right now.
Good Lord. Man. Okay, that's incredible. I think I speak for all of us. Okay, geez. So I guess we'll go straight into like a couple of the things people were curious about, I guess. And yeah, I mean, we asked the club some like preliminary questions, like if they had anything to say, and there was a small list. I'll just go down it. Someone said a project manager. A lot of your positions have been project manager, right?
Yeah, project manager, producer, creative director, or modeling supervisor.
Let's see. So, what are things that like? What are some things that people don't realize about being a project manager for a video game? Does project managing change depend on the size of the game studio? How does that vary?
Yeah, so I'm gonna merge a bunch of those in because there's some definitions that people really need to make sure that they understand. One is, what is a project manager and what's the difference from a producer? This is one of the things that everybody seems to get wrong. And some people are like, oh, you're a project manager, you have complete control over the project. Well, yes, depending on what project and what company you're at, and everybody calls them different things. So EA calls project managers development managers. They call development directors producers. They also have producers, but they have slightly different roles. Every studio is slightly different. The main difference is a producer is responsible for the vision of the game. They're to make the game great, make it look kind of really amazing, and generally make people want to play. Just think Elon Musk, they're that really cheerleader person that's like, yeah, we're going to make something really epic. Cool beans, go everybody. They hold the entire responsible for making the entire game great, or crap, like SimCity. Project managers, on the other hand, are responsible for making sure everything is delivered on time, on budget, and actually works. Making sure that they take the vision from the producer, stripping it apart, breaking it into manageable chunks so that artists, engineers, animators can actually work on it, working with the teams to schedule it and estimate it out, making sure they know what to work on and when, and ensuring it delivers when it's set out to do, and communicating issues, mitigating any disagreements, and changing things as they happen, because change is inevitable. It is never what you originally set out to build. And so that's a key difference between the two positions. And a lot of people get very confused about what the differences are. But really, project managers are herding cats. that is the best definition of a project manager, is herding cats. The reason for it is quite simple. Let's say you're building a trailer. Your trailer is really small. You usually have one team. It's kind of a waterfall process. You get the assets from the development team and they just build it. Usually there's a project manager in charge of that. They build a waterfall system. Cool. Now you build a feature. What does a feature mean? Well, a feature is multiple teams working together to ensure that an actual element comes together, and it can be across multiple teams, multiple departments, multiple countries. But then that gets complicated because everybody's timing is different, and you have to make sure people are not getting blocked, making sure that people are actually working together on the same way and the communication's happening. And then there's like building a game. You take 1,000 or 100,000 features, and you now have to put them all together. Communication timelines, making sure everybody works in the same way. But when you look at it, everybody wants something different. Let's take building a model. Let's say this modeler wants to build a character. You really want to build out a really good character because you're working on Gears of War, and you want to make the most amazing character because Gears of War characters look sweet. So they want to make amazing art, make amazing, and they really want to put that in their showcase and show it off. Cool. But your art lead wants to be optimized and named properly, and it needs to be the right amount of polygons. Your art director wants it to match the style guide and match his vision. And yes, more blue is a thing. It's legit, like I've had feedback that is more blue, so beware. The producer wants to have 30 of them and it should all be dynamically swappable. And you're like, okay, this is now getting quite a lot of things that this one character needs to have. Marketing mandates that it needs to look closer to the IP that you're actually building towards, but never actually provides direction. They just say it needs to look more like the IP. And they need 30 renders and provide a turntable or something to that with fancy backgrounds. Then legal says you need to add Adidas shoes because they've just signed an agreement to make sure that it has Adidas shoes on your characters, because if you don't, you're now sued for millions of dollars. Your rigor is like, what the hell? This polygon count of this character is 9 million polygons. I need a low poly version of this with line flow in the correct spots so that when I bend my arm, I don't end up with this all getting jank. The animal wants to have more line flow because he wants to have the eyebrows go that 2 centimeters more in his face. The level designer asks for collision box because he needs to be able to have hitboxes. And the project manager at the end of the day is having a breakdown in the corner as he realizes he needs to herd everybody together who has their own agendas onto the same page and deliver in 2 days because there's 300 more assets to deliver in this next month. Really, it's herding cats. Because the most important thing to know about project manager is they're just trying to get their job done, but often they have to hurt somebody's vision or ideas along the way and say no. And saying no as a project manager is the most important skill you will ever learn as a project manager, because it is the skill that you'll have to use the most. Because you can't have everything that you want. And it's just unfortunate, but true. Because otherwise game development, I'm going to take Final Fantasy as an example, will take 12 years to develop. So yeah, that kind of answers the like 2 top ones, I think.
Clarifies so much, honestly. Yeah. We have a list. I'll shoot another question your way if that's all right. Oh man. Okay. Yeah. One of my favorite questions that I saw someone ask was, is there anything that people like working in these various teams should consistently be doing to make your life as a project manager easier? Like, is there something you expect of members, like some specific little things that you're just like, okay, you're gonna do this and that? You know,
Yeah, the simple answer is communicate. Communicate. This can be from as simple as logging your time, because there's nothing more annoying than a project manager or coordinator coming to you and saying every single day, hey, have you logged your time? Because to be honest, it's annoying from my side, it's annoying from your side, and you get to be really annoyed at the middle. Logging time is important, and not just for the sake of logging time. Like, to be honest, if I could avoid logging time, I would. But logging time when you're in a large studio like that, it allows your team to not overscope. It allows your team to figure out how much time they actually need to do something, and allows you to come back to me and say, look, this is not going to get delivered. Because if you say that to me, I'll be a lot more lenient and I'll be a lot more understanding and make adjustments and changes. Estimating. If you give estimates, give realistic estimates. If you say it's going to take 30 minutes, it never takes 30 minutes because it just doesn't. There's people that would talk to you. There is, oh, I forgot about the fact that it might include this particular thing. Oh, it might have procrastination, or build blogs that suddenly said, oh, it needs to be pink rather than blue, so you need to go back and change the colors. There's lots of things. Give a realistic estimate that you kind of can meet to, even if things go wrong. And the final thing is your PM's there to help you. If you're going to be late, say it. Give advance warning. Like, if you don't give advance warning and you get to your end of your sprint and it's delayed and you haven't told anybody until that last day, everybody's going to be angry. Everybody's going to go, what the hell? Why don't we know about this? And then you're going to be doing overtime, and you're going to be blaming the project manager for having to do overtime. But the simple answer is, if you had come to that project manager and said, hey, this is going to be late on day 3, be like, okay, cool. I got no issues with that. I would go and reschedule things around. I would change things around, make it so that other teams are not blocked and waiting, and there'll be no overtime. For reference, any project manager that, if your team matches and says all communication and everything, if your project manager still gives you overtime, they suck as a project manager. For reference, I have given overtime in the 10 years that I've been doing this, probably 10 times, 5 of which were my own fault. And that's the thing. If your project manager can't own up to the fact that they failed dismally, then they suck even more. There is times when your project manager will fail because there's a lot of moving pieces. So it's both ways. Be respectful. Your project manager may not be an artist and they may not fully understand how modeling works. Like, if you speak to me, sure, I understand it, but like sometimes you won't. If you talk to me about how to make an API backend for connecting servers to the data storage system, I understand the rough gist, but I don't have your detailed expertise, and we're going to lean on you. And that's why communication is the most important thing. And then respect comes into that, because you both have a job to do and you're both trying to do the best you can. So, yeah.
Hey, Colin. So on the subject of, I guess, managing time, there's different types of management, like software and styles, like Scrum, Agile. In our club, Trello is very popular. That's how we default to like organizing our different projects. How in the professional sphere, like what software is used mostly, like what have you used the most of, and what types of like management styles have been the most successful in that you've seen in your career?
Sure. So let's start with software. There is only one software, well, 2 softwares in game development. One is Shotgun, or now it's called ShotGrid. That is the universal standard for most modeling, animation, film, TV, you name it. ShotGrid is the go-to software. It is very artist focused, where you can do revisions and see the changes and see the iterations and all of that kind of thing. It's really good for that. Then there's Jira, which Jira is the master controller. And for reference, there is a 2-way sync between ShotGrid and Jira. But Jira is usually master at every single studio. I'm going to say Ubisoft, because it is at Ubisoft, Activision, EA, Square Enix, Capcom, they're all in Jira. It's not even a question. If you want to use Trello, it's irrelevant. It's Jira. 99% of teams work in Scrum, usually with between 1 week and 2 week sprints. The exceptions to that are teams such as marketing, such as live operations, monitoring services, and IT things like that. So those are usually in Kanban, or just in time, or priority stack orders, or things like that, just depending on what group they are and how they want to put it. But the most of them are in Scrum. I know some people really like to break out and try new software. The simple answer is it doesn't really help, because Jira is just become such a standard. It is the most stable. It has the best security. It's ugly as hell, and it's slow as hell, but it works. It also has a lot of plugins, and it becomes very expensive very fast. But that is one of the best ways to actually expand the capabilities of it, is plugins. Out of the box, Jira sucks, but when you actually build it up and make it look kind of really fancy with all the Gants and everything else, it really is useful. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. How do you spell that? Gyro? That's Jira. Jira.
Yeah, Jira.
Declan asks, "Where's the Trello?" I think that's a question for us. We've got. Dang, we're not doing our job as project managers. Okay, where's the Trello? Oh no. Anyways, okay. Ryan asked earlier. He said, "So you're working with exposure therapy for PTSD. Could you tell us more about the PTSD stuff? That's intriguing."
Sure. So there's many different variations of it, and dealing with it is hard. One of the most effective methods has been exposure therapy, where you actually either reenact or go back to a scenario where it is similar in a controlled manner. And that is the big thing. It has to be a controlled manner, and experience and really understand it. Often it has to be tailored to the individual user. Let's say a particular person had been having a grenade land next to him and it exploded. And his partner or friend or whatever had either a serious injury or had passed away, and they had watched that happen. One of the best ways to go through it is visually looking through it and watching it happen while having a psychiatrist kind of working through the issues with you and trying to figure out how you can get past there, and realizing that it wasn't your fault, realizing that there was nothing you could have done. There's freak accidents all the time, and like making sure that people really understand that that is something that happens, and just replaying it is actually one of the best things to do, because your mind changes it all the time, and your mind will always make it kind of feel like it's your issue when it isn't necessarily. So that's kind of something that we've been trying to do. But it also applies not just to the military field, but also to nurses and doctors and things like that. Maybe they made a mistake one time where they jabbed a scalpel a little bit too far, or they accidentally gave a person the wrong injection. That can actually scar a lot of people. Or a person comes in with as was one of the demos, a saw blade through their chest, gushing blood everywhere, and it really traumatized them. Working with them to understand that it's kind of normal in industry to have these kind of things, and to work through them and to kind of talk about it. And talking about it is one of the key components, but visualizing it in a way that doesn't make it feel like it's uncontrollable is something else that we work with there. So yeah, it's an interesting area. Yeah, it's not always pleasant, but yeah.
Thank you. Could you, okay, some people were a bit more curious about how much control, I guess, you have on the creativity of a project. I know you made the distinction between producer and project manager, but like, can you describe the work relationship between a producer and a project manager? Like, how do ideas flow, and what does the producer do next? Like, what's the control of like ideas entering a project, I guess, between project manager and producer?
Yeah, okay. I want to reference this to Star Wars. It's Luke Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi. Your producer is very much Luke Skywalker, who always wants to go forth and take everybody out quickly and leap forth. And it's not always the best idea. And so you have to very much be the Obi-Wan Kenobi and say, look, let's maybe take a break, take a step back and figure out what exactly we can do within the scope of our kind of people that we have, within the weapon choices that we have, within whatever it may be. So very much it's the producer comes to you with, this is the grandiose plan, and the project manager has to take that plan and be like, these are the chunks that we can do. Is this the priorities that you want to focus on? Is this the kind of thing that you want to end up with a result? Like at the end of the day, what do you want to see? Is it good gameplay? Is it good sound quality? Is it good, whatever it may be? What's the focus? Because you can't always have them all, because it's very expensive to have them all and takes years. And so really figuring out what you have in your team and really understanding how you can get there in the fastest possible methodologies, in the fastest way, working with your expertise that you as a project manager should really know in your team. Like if you've got a really good guy who understands nanite in Unreal and can optimize it to the next gen level, cool. That's something you should focus on because you have expertise in that. And that's what your project manager is there for, is to understand your team and be able to schedule accordingly, as well as kind of drive it forward from their vision. It is not a case of the project manager suddenly can say, yeah, I don't fancy that, let's just do an MMO instead. No, your project manager is there to kind of drive other people's visions. Sometimes it may be a producer, sometimes it may be a design director, sometimes it may be a design team. Really, it kind of comes down to how the company is set it up, but you're usually driving somebody else's vision. I know.
So we have some questions here in the chat. One from Declan and Devin have like the same kind of questions here. How do artists and programmers get the attention of larger game companies?
Yeah, so I have gone through my lifetime over at least 10,000 resumes and cover letters and everything else. And I've probably hired over 1,000 people during my career. The simple answer is don't make your resume look the exact same as everybody else's. If you're in university, do something different. I'm going to take an example that we had an issue, and we actually went to the university and said, like, this is just stupid. But University of UBC, which is a large one in Vancouver, probably the largest university in Western Canada, they and SFU, which is another one there, and a couple other universities in the area, all had the same courses. They all had the same goals. They all had the same coursework. And when you're looking at resume and they all say, yeah, we built out a Minecraft, or Minecraft kind of server, and then we did a trebuchet thing to determine physics, and then we all did Minesweeper or whatever else it may be. They're all the same projects. And when you've got Bill Blogs, Samantha Jones, Knob Creek, whatever it may be, and they all have the same resume, you all really don't have that much experience. It's kind of sucky because I got no differentiation between it. The biggest differentiation is that they spell everything correctly, which is a horrible one to go with. And for reference, spell check is a big issue. Get friends to review it, because if you have a spelling mistake, you are at least 30% less likely to get the job. It is that big an issue for a lot of recruiters. It's not just spelling though. Is this a cohesive sentence? Does it make sense? Is it nicely created, and does it make sense to everybody? And if it doesn't, reward it. Also, if you whiffle, please don't whiffle. We have to go thousands of these things. Whiffle means, for some Scottish, blabber on, just keep talking and talking. There's so many resumes I've seen. It's like, oh yeah, I did this thing, and I did this thing, and oh yeah, I was really cool at doing this thing, and oh, maybe some of that stuff was really cool. Yeah, it was kind of cool. Yeah, just like, so what did you actually do? Tell me what it is you actually did. Make it succinct, make it clear, make it simple. In a team, you did a team project. What did you actually do? you say you're a team lead, you collaborated. Cool. What does collaborated mean? Does collaborated mean that you drove the project forward to ensure that you hit deadlines? Was it the fact that you communicated with all different team members? Was it that you set up the plan and defined a plan and then made sure you adhere to that plan within a set timeline? Those are things that are important. And it's all soft skills because, to be honest, your hard skills are very much university based. If you can, your resume is worth 20% of whatever kind of job interview. 20% is that. 40% is usually your portfolio. So if you are an artist, and I'm going to use artist because my background is art, your portfolio needs to be more than 4 images. It needs to have at least usually 10 images, ideally some turntables, ideally some wireframes. If you can do the wireframe, then a shaded version with albino kind of textures, and then a rendered version, that's great. I want to see that. I want to see that you actually give a care, give a shit, and actually want to make this presentation good. Because if you don't care about your work and you just slap that image onto your resume, it shows to me that you just don't care or you don't think it's worth it. Setting up the kind of quality bar higher than other people, as much as it sounds kind of lame, it is true. It's one of those things that if you're a marketing person, I would love to see that you had applied to a charity and you created some form of kind of event that had happened and you actually put that link onto your resume, because I want to see that. I want to see how well your marketing handled. If you came back to me and said, yeah, we had a return of 30 people viewed the actual image and we had a click-through rate of 80%, I'd be like, 80% click-through rate, wow, that's great. Show me the data, like, can we hire you? For reference, average click-through rate is like 0.2%. So yeah, like we want to know that kind of information and show us what made it cool. It doesn't matter if you did it for another company. You could have done it for yourself. If you applied your artwork to a magazine or you put it in one of the competitions and you actually put yourself out there, that's great. That shows initiative. That shows that you're actually trying to push yourself forward. If you just have a bog standard resume that says, went to university, did coursework 1, coursework 2, coursework 3, and potentially worked at a cafe store, it's not got much to go with. And I've got 1,000 other people that have the exact same resume. Make it stand out. That's really what it is. If you got code, make sure you have either GitHub or something link that we can go see your code, because otherwise we're going to ask you to do a test. And tests suck. I would be perfectly honest, as a coder and somebody has written code, tests suck. Nobody wants to do them. So if you can provide the information, that's great. Especially if what you've done is really well done. I'd rather you did a small bit of code, but it was optimized to perfection so that we don't just look at it and be like, why the hell would you use an array there versus something else? And I'm just like, that's something we want to care about, because when you've got hundreds of millions of lines of code in your game, if it's unoptimized and we have to constantly babysit you to make optimized code, from our side, it sucks. So show us that you actually care, show us that you can do it great, and actually give us information. If you got references, put them on there. That's a kind of a simple one. It could be just the colleagues that you were working with. It could be your university professor. It is a very easy way to kind of give references if you have them. Because, as I said, 40% is your portfolio, 20% is your resume, the rest of it's that interview. And in that interview, if you got to that stage, it's all on you. It's got nothing to do with what your resume says. It has nothing to do with what your anything says. It's all on you. And by that, I mean is, if you don't have personality and you can't come across as somebody who's genuine, it's really hard to hire that person. I've experienced this so many times. I've had people from Apple that literally have applied to these game studios, or from large banks or anything like this. And they're just like, I did the thing that I was told to do. Yes, I've got all the qualifications. Yes, I did the thing, yada, yada, yada. And they talk and talk and talk. And you're just like, wow, this is a robot. I could have literally hired anybody and it'd be a robot. Whereas I've had people, and for reference, I hired this over an Apple person, a person who had a year's experience. And they came in and was like, they had, for reference, they had shoes stacked behind them in like perfect boxes. They had it like perfection, like it was like immaculate, like Pinterest board level. And it brought up a conversation. Wow, those are some impressive shoes. And like, yeah, I like making things perfect. I like coming in and saying, I'm going to do a great job, and I'm always going to do a good job because this is what the personality type I have. Have it, take it or leave it. Like that was like mind blowing. I was like, she's got a personality. She knows what she wants. That's who I want to hire. And that's the thing. Like, if you can show your personality, be it through hobbies that you do, be it through something that you enjoy to do, or something that's in your background, something that you can make as a statement, that's great. Like, I'm going to take Nathan here as Nathan Harris. You've got a keyboard. Talk to me about like the music that you make. Talk to me about what you enjoy to do. Do you compose? Do you just write them? Do you do singing as well? Like, what is it you like to do and why? And those are things that really enthrall a kind of interviewer, because those are what we want to know. For reference, please don't blow your background. It just makes it like we actually like, if you live in a pigsty or it looks horrible, sure, I understand. I 100% understand. I'm not going to comment. My background is not much better either. It's, yeah. But if you really want to make impression, have your stuff that you want to talk about, and that's key. Talk about Pikachu. Talk about your Warhammer things. Talk about the fact that you own a Mac and you love that. Why do you love Macs versus PCs? Please don't put that as a topic.
It's my roommate, but yeah. Yeah.
There's so many things you can talk about. For reference, the thing that got my current job was I talked about Warhammer Total War game, and I compared the fact that I love Total War, and I think it applies directly to project management, because you have to manage all of your troops. You have to understand the economies of scale. You have to understand that when you attack somewhere here, you're leaving yourself open to here. And so everything's a management game. And so you have to really understand all the individual pieces that you have and how to make it work. And so linking it back to project management and something that I do is cool, because then they really like, I understand Total War because I play Total War. This is something that I can relate to. Whereas most of the time, the people that are hiring you are not a programmer. They're not necessarily what you are. They're often a project manager, a director, a manager who honestly doesn't understand what you do. And so like, if you can relate it to something they can relate to, you're golden. So that last 40% is key. And if you can have a good portfolio that shows that you care, if you have a resume that's clean and has no spelling mistakes and concise, and you come to an interview with energy and you can really relate to everybody, that's great.
That was a fantastic
awesome
answer. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Coincidentally, the career fair for specifically computer science and information science is tomorrow, and that's also the day when like the campus-wide all majors career fair or career showcase, I think is what it's called, starts, and that's like Monday through Thursday. So that's, excellent evidence when we're just a couple days away from career fairs.
Yeah. A quick question. Do you have like any portfolio pages? Do you have like an art station or anything like that?
Oh, I do not that anymore.
Cool. Okay.
All my work is either under NDA or stuff that I technically didn't work on because I was hired as a project manager, but I worked until like 2 a.m. in the middle of the night to deliver. Such as Square Enix, like in Kingsglaive, the big city that you get bombarded. I was building that to like 4 a.m. in the morning because the client was like, yeah, we need this by tomorrow. And I was like, everybody's gone home. It's like, cool, you've got till tomorrow. Otherwise, you get a huge fine slap in the face. And I was like, cool, I guess I know what I'm doing for the next 8 hours. Yeah.
So we did have a couple questions stream in.
Go for it.
So let's see. The first one was from Christian. He's great. Christian, do you want to say your question out loud, or do you just want me to read it out to him?
I mean, whatever is fine.
Yeah, go for it.
I was going to ask about resumes. So as a person hiring, like the stuff that you're looking on a resume, is coursework more valuable than like work experience or clubs, leadership, research, etc.? Like what are the top things that you look on a resume apart from individuality?
So that depends on where you're applying. Let's say if you're an artist, programmer, big guy, kind of the most generic type. I'm not talking about legal, marketing, and other people. I'm sorry. But in the most generic types, then what we really care about is seeing your coursework. We really care about work experience. If you have worked in a bar, you've worked in retail, you've worked in something of that sort, it is actually a benefit. And the simple reason is actually pretty obvious. You can talk. There's so many people that come to our industry, and I'm going to be pretty honest, I was one of them, having been a World of Warcraft fan since Alpha, sitting in the basement, playing lots of games, not being great at communication. It doesn't lead well to getting a job. Whereas if you can say, yeah, I worked in a bar, dealing with assholes all day, it's really great. That's cool. That's literally personality 101. That's showing that you can communicate. That's showing that you can handle responsibility and pressure and annoying people, which annoying people are very important because there's a lot of them in the industry. Egos is a big thing. And so if you can handle that, that's great. It also gives you stories. Like if you had an annoying guy that constantly complained about the fact that you weren't pronouncing his name right, then you can say, sure, I decided to, he kind of was really annoying, so I decided to keep spelling his name mistake on purpose and kept calling him Colin instead of Colin. I want to take a dig at Americans for Colin Powell. Yeah. So yeah, there's definite things there that you can bring up, you can talk about, and it brings life to your interview. Any research you do to any art or programming kind of projects is irrelevant. It's more about what you've done in terms of like tangible stuff. Ideally, if you have a link to your trebuchet project or to whatever other projects, it's great. You can actually see what you did rather than just being this random project that arbitrarily exists, possibly. And your experience is key. You could have done volunteering work. That's also a good one. Yeah.
Cool. I had a question that occurred to me, or I guess might be like a contradiction maybe. When you were talking about what you were looking to hire people, you're like, oh yes, personality, individuality, creativity. And then right before you were talking about how the producer's the one with the vision, and then the project manager just has to execute that vision, and then the programmers and the artists have to obey all these constraints that other teams place on them. So you're looking to hire people with a lot of creativity and passion, but in the job that they're signing up for, there's not so much freedom for them to be creative. So I was going to ask how, I guess, creatively rewarding or satisfying it is to work on a video game on a team like that.
Sure. As a junior, it's not. Especially at a large studio, I'm going to be perfectly honest, it's not. Hands down, I can't explain it any other way. You will literally be told what to do for the most part, and that is what you'll have to do. You either sink or swim, and you either hate it or you love it. Certain people very much enjoy repetition, just being told what to do, and they'll go forth and do it, and they'll do it well. Other people really enjoy the ability to go and say, hey, do I have an option to go off and build this really cool thing and then come back to you and like work with you to build this kind of direction? And usually you'll find that in smaller-esque studios, not indie like 10 people studios, but like in the 50 to 100 people studios. Those are definitely kind of the key areas. If you want to be creative, those are better places to be. Be aware that if you go into those studios, you wear many hats, and quickly you go from being junior to sort of junior, but not really. So learning is very fast, learning is very quick. Whereas I'm going to take Ubisoft as an example. You're expected to be on kind of just learning how Ubisoft works for 6 months before you even actually do work. And this applies to multiple AAA studios. EA, I think it's 4 months. Activision is less, currently at 2 months, but there is many studios that have this long, just digest it, get to know people, really understand how our processes work. And then at 6 months, we'll kind of come in, well, usually it's slightly before, we'll come in and be like, okay, this is where we think you can drive towards. Here's the stuff that works, starting to push forward. It's not saying that you're not doing anything between there, but the kind of core actual work that makes it to any kind of project usually only starts then, versus smaller studios, which is usually day 2. Yeah.
So we had this question from Andrew Wilson. Andrew, did you want to say your question out loud? No. All right. Okay. So I'll just read it for you then. He asked, do you think interviews will be digital for the foreseeable future? And I guess a good question, like a good add-on to that, would be like how to make yourself stand out in a digital interview when you can't be in person and in the same room.
The simple answer is yes. I know each place in the US is very different, and each place has different regulations and rules and everything else. In Canada, pretty much there is no in-person interviews. The same applies to most of Europe and elsewhere. Right now, everything is being done digitally as much as possible. The simple reason is most large studios, or even the smaller ones now, are distributed globally, because I'm going to be perfectly honest, it's cheaper to hire in China and Asia and places like this in a digital world now that we're all remote anyway. So yes, digital has definitely become the kind of core. The way you can stand out is, as we said before, bring your personality, bring your A game, have a decent mic. Please don't bring a mic that sounds constant, like you're scratching on it, like it's horrible, or you've got somebody that's got a disco going on behind you, or I've had ones which are like there's people screaming in the corner. I'm just like, I don't want to hear this. I don't want to know about that. Like, yeah, there's definitely things that just keep it a clean environment. If you do have disturbances, like there's noise going on, get a mic that you can just turn off with a click or button or whatever else. I know that a lot of programs have the mute button, but like it's nice to have a separate button you can just turn off. And then you can just like mute it whenever there's large noise and then pause, whatever it may be. Digital is definitely the way. Bring your personality, bring topics, bring background elements as much as possible. And that's really the key.
There's one that a lot of people wanted. Crunch. What's your experience with crunch culture and burnout in your career?
I have been burnt out a lot. Activision, for example, was one of the best places I had ever worked in terms of cultural sensitivity, in terms of being great to work for, in terms of openness and awareness. They're great. The issue is often it is decided by stocks and shareholders and things like this. So during the time I was there, they had one of the most successful years they ever had, but they expected to have 20% higher than they had originally stated. Even though they had done better than any other year, they decided on a hiring freeze for that year. And I had just taken on 5 additional projects, or 5 additional teams, sorry, and was expecting to have 2 additional resources, coordinators underneath me. But because of the hiring freeze, I was left with a total of 6 teams and just myself across Beijing, Vancouver, and Dublin time zones. And so I don't even know like what time zone was what at that point, because it's a full 24-hour shift at that point. And so burnout has been a huge thing throughout my career that I've had to deal with. Some things are avoidable. Making sure that you say, yeah, no, I'm not on at this time, because there's no way in hell I'm going to be on at 2 a.m. just for a meeting. I'm sorry. It's just not possible. And being clear that you can't be on all the time. The other thing that you have to be really careful with is setting expectations. If you say, yeah, I can take that on, I can take that on, yeah, I can take that on, yeah, I can take that on, make sure you can, because it adds up, especially because projects exponentially increase, and you will be the person that owns that for the foreseeable future, even if your boss says, oh yeah, you just need to do it from now until we get the person for that, because hiring one person is a 6 month process. So just be aware. Crunch culture, I hate. I've said it before, like I have only done 10 times where we've had to do overtime, 5 of which were my own mistakes. But in reality, it should never be a thing. Each studio is different, and I've worked with many of the different studios across the world. I'm going to be honest, the US studios are not particularly good for crunch. The best studios are usually Sweden, any of the North countries really. Romania surprisingly is pretty good. Canada's not bad. China or Asia is getting completely screwed. What do you mean breaks? Especially if you're in Japan, I had people on the Square Enix team that slept underneath their desks, had 3-hour naps, then went back to work for another 8 hours and slept for 3 hours, continued back on work, day in, day out. And that was just the expected culture in a lot of the Japanese studios that I had friends at. That being said, burnout in a lot of the Californian and Texas studios that were around at the time, Baton Rouge, were not great. They had a lot of overtime, often because they didn't communicate. Whereas the other teams, often the reason they did well was they communicated. And so it is a thing. There's no way to get around crunch. It really comes down to communication and who you have on your team. If your project manager sucks, guess what? You've got overtime.
I see. Okay, we're almost at like 6 minutes left here. I mean, officially, I mean, I wouldn't dare keep you more than you want to, but if you want to, of course, I suppose go a bit over. But let's see. How to be a good and unique employee once you are hired? That's a fun question. Declan asks that.
The answer is talk to people.
Communicate's been the theme.
I mean, it really is. It doesn't just mean like communicate in terms of what you're working on. It means just meet people, greet people, speak to people, understand their issues, their worries, their problems. Maybe you can get yourself hooked onto a different project because you spoke to a person and like, yeah, I've been really struggling with being able to get Unreal Engine to work with Frostbite and how that connection works. And because we do our trailers over here, but our actual gameplay's over here, I don't really know what to do. And like, cool, I actually have an idea on that. Could I take a look? And like, you do? Cool, sure. Now you're embedded onto that project with somebody who's super senior and you might really enjoy going into that area. So when you're starting out and you have that 6 months of time, guess what? It's your time to shine. It's your time to figure out what you want to do. It's your time to go out there and figure out what the problems are. Because I'm going to be honest, most senior people are not going to go to somebody who's either an intern or junior and say, hey, here's my problems. They're going to be silent. And so if you can go to them, talk to them, figure out what it is, bring it up. And you get into those areas that you want to go in, and it will be much smoother sailing.
Awesome. Awesome. Oh man. We're currently as a club, at least the beginner sessions. I know I reached out to you a while back just personally for help on like how to manage the club wide game. We did end up shutting that project down just due to well, there's technical difficulties with procedural generation and lighting and some like graphics demands. Lighting, yeah. um, anyways, but since then we're doing like these beginner sessions where sort of introducing people to Unreal Engine and stuff. We're gonna have like another one at 4 p.m. today. And,
Yeah.
and tied in with that is like this collaborative effort towards a new game. We're trying to make a really simple, just like collectathon platformer along the lines of Super Mario, whole Super Florida Man game. Yep, just the parody of all the Florida Man news articles of like crazy guy doing whatever. So a lot of your input today has been helpful in like managing that. I'm sure we'll probably add like a waterfall chart to the Trello, stuff like that. Assign tasks to people.
I will answer one question that was on that list, by the way.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Unity or Unreal?
Let's go.
Hero Engine. And none of you will have heard of Hero Engine. Came out in 2011. It actually had the first collaborative creation mode, which Unreal still fails at to this day. And this was in 2011, so it's impressive that they managed to be able to create something like that. And it's also one of the original engines that I developed with, and I actually have key input onto that engine, which is kind of cool. But on Unity versus Unreal, but only for one good reason. It's better at everything except for mobile.
Interesting, cool.
Like every single large AAA studio is looking at Unreal. I'm going to take Frostbite and EA. EA spends roughly 25 million on Frostbite per year. Unreal probably spends 300 million on Unreal. You can't compare with the costs. You can't compare with the earnings. You can't compare with how much they're spending and delivering the technological improvements when the focus of game studios is to make a game versus Unreal building an engine. It's just vastly different. Unreal is, in terms of quality, in terms of building out a better ecosystem, Unreal is definitely the better one. Unity, though, mobile, hands down, go for mobile.
Interesting. Very, very, very interesting. That's a lovely answer. That's one I like that answer. People in this club, we have an overwhelming amount of Unity users, but I'm trying to convert people to Unreal Engine. So yeah. That's good.
Unless you're working in mobile, you will either be working in custom or Unreal Engine.
Oh, Declan makes a good point. I'm sure you're incredibly busy, Colin. We have a very active Discord server where we have a lot of people that they just idle in it. I suppose inviting you publicly like this might put pressure on it, but of course, being the project manager you are, I hope you have the willpower to say no. If you'd like, I'll drop you the invite link to our Discord if you want to. I don't know, but there's not much to do there, I suppose.
If you want, sure, toss me a link. I'm on Discord all the time. The current place I'm working is on Discord, so I'm on there regardless.
Oh wow. Do they use Slack? I mean, Jira for like task management. Then there's Slack and Discord for communication. What are your thoughts?
Every large studio has moved to Teams.
No, Microsoft Teams.
Yeah, and I agree with everybody's face here.
Why?
Because they offered security. They also offered the integration into all of their painful solutions from Excel to the Microsoft accounts that they already have, versus Slack, which had a whole bunch of security breaches. They also are not particularly great at customer service. And Microsoft just offers them a cash load of money in buckets and says, hey, go with Teams. It's also cheaper. That's the simple answer. It's really sad. I hate Teams personally. For reference, I have currently 32 Teams accounts because I have to deal with lots of customers' clients. There's only one customer that is not on Teams. And so, yeah.
That's terrible. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. So Discord is what we use as the company, but Teams is what every other company is pretty much using.
I see.
The only one to that is currently not is EA right now, but they are planning to move to there in the foreseeable future.
Interesting.
That's almost as sad as all of my classes having group chats on GroupMe instead of Discord. Discord always gets the tough end of the stick.
Yeah.
Yeah. The non-CS students haven't been enlightened by Discord for the most part.
Discord has its own issues with the whole Nitro and everything else. which-
Right, oh, certainly, but they're somewhat secure, right? I mean, they can't promise like privacy on your messages, I suppose, but like generally speaking, it is an invite-only
But
platform.
you can also hook up APIs and other things in a very sketchy way,
True.
whereas Teams has to go through all of their crap, for better word. That does make it more secure.
Right.
I miss MSN Messenger, so don't even get me started.
I'd rather use Ask Online than Microsoft Teams. Minecraft private server chat. Lots of things coming in. Well, I mean, that's an hour of your time, and it's. I mean, I wouldn't. Anyone has questions, ask them. I think we've gotten through almost every question that people have asked. How to be a good employee. We did Udemy and Unreal. I guess we've talked a lot about project management, not so much I know your experience with like environment art and some of your other like, you know, original more I don't know, core game development experiences, I guess. I mean, of course, you know, that not to say project management isn't core to game development, certainly, but like, you know, the a fun one to end off with. Which of your game projects did you have the most fun working on?
COD Mobile. And for a very weird reason, it was hilarious working with the Chinese government to actually make that approved in China, because you would literally see these email threads that had like over 300 forward threads, because they didn't know, they had to forward it to their manager, forward it to the manager, forward it to their manager, forward it to the manager. And you get a message back after like 2 months, and it would come back with 300 forwards saying yes. And you're just like, it was one of those projects that was just surreal. And some of the reasonings were so obscure and just didn't make sense. Like, for example, bodies. I had never thought that a body would be an issue. Like I thought like maybe blood might be a thing, but no, bodies. Like Call of Duty, it's a shooting game. Yeah, show the body potentially, or show body falling. No, you can't have that. You can't have skeletons. You can't have scary Halloween-y things. You can't have a lot of things. And it made it very interesting. Like the prototypes that were being built for this game ended up like using teddy bears, because we're like, what the fuck do we put in this thing? Because it's literally just teddy bears. So like we're literally like shooting them and then this literally pop and change into a teddy bear. It was great fun. Yeah, the best was the slicing when you like cut the person's throat or whatever, and the teddy bear suddenly pops up in front of your face. Great fun. Yeah,
That's ridiculous.
yeah. So it's my favorite one for a weird reason.
That's
Very
absurd.
memorable.
Oh man. Well, with that, I mean, I don't want to keep you any longer.
That's just a good note to end on.
Yeah, I think it is. Mr. Davidson, Colin, thank you so much.
Thanks
So much.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I DM'd you the invite link. I'll drop it to you on Discord itself, so that we and if you want, you can hang out on our server. But you know, at the same time, I'm sure you're busy and don't want to pester you with too many more questions. But maybe a member or two of ours might reach out. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. But,
If you do want to reach out, feel free. I am on there. I won't necessarily respond right away. I do a lot of stuff, but definitely just reach out and we'll definitely see.
thank you so much.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
It's great to speak with everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great one, guys.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much. All right.